we are going to break down the muscle up ring row. And this drill is a progression that builds on the previous drill, the kipping ring row. And as you can see in the video, what the big focus of this drill is introducing the transitional element of the ring muscle up, where we move from underneath the rings to up over them into the bottom of our dip. And this drill allows us to do so in a more controlled environment than simply swinging around the rings and trying to perform a transition. As always, there are some key elements that we need to keep in mind if we are going to practice this transition and really nail the elements we need for when we then apply it to trying to perform an actual ring muscle up. The first half of the movement is something that you should recognize. It's essentially identical to the kipping ring row that we've been practicing. So the setup is the same. Rings around about hip height, feet under the rings. Lean back into a ring row, drop your hips, drive your hips, and then pull your elbows out to the side. Or another way of thinking about it is pull the rings towards your shoulders. So again, that should have been a repeat of everything you've heard when practicing that previous drill. From here is where the extra layer comes up. And the first thing is when we perform a transition, the foundational element to a successful transition, it sounds a bit stupid and obvious, is that you need to move from under the rings to over the rings. And where a lot of athletes make a big mistake is that they think it is a pulling motion. But a pulling motion is only ever going to get you to the rings. It's never going to get you over the rings. If we want to have our shoulders pass over them, we need to then also move from this pulling motion into a pressing motion. And that is what's going to allow our shoulders to rise up over the rings. So notice that after I've driven my hips, after I've pulled with my arms, I then, as the next step, begin to press into the rings. And when I say into, I mean down towards the floor. And that allows my shoulders and my elbows to rise up over the rings. It allows me to move past the straps and land in that bottom of the ring dip. So that's element number one. You need to make sure that after you've performed the hip drive and the pull, you then start to press down into the rings so you actually have a chance of rising up over them. The next point to help you get this transition is that as you press down, you need to make sure that the rings stay in line with your body. Some athletes, when they press down, will find that the rings also move out. And that is not what we want. We need to keep them in line with ourselves. Additionally, during this pulling, pressing phase here at the start, the actual pull that we've practiced is going to help us move forwards. But we also want to try and aid that forward momentum that's going to help us with our transition by moving our head and our shoulders forwards as we start to press down. Some people cue it as thinking about performing a sit-up. Others cue it as thinking about just leaning forwards. They are all good. The takeaway message is that you need to make sure that as you pull and press on the rings, you need to drive forwards with your upper body. And you need to do so early. You shouldn't wait. Often, you'll find that the movement becomes much more smooth and much easier if you think about moving forwards through the rings nice and early. Finally, the finishing position that we're looking for is, as you see in the freeze frame here. And what I mean by that is that the elbows are over the wrists and the shoulders are over the rings, as in over the line of the rings. What we don't want to see is, one, the shoulders are too far down, so you've simply stopped pressing into the rings and you've allowed your shoulders to drop all the way down here. That's not what we want. Or two, you haven't moved far enough past the straps, and instead of having your elbows over your wrists, you end up in more of a position like this, where your elbows are behind your wrists And either you'll fail the muscle up because you won't actually complete the transition fully, or you'll find that it's a very, very difficult dip to get out of. And those are the main takeaways for the muscle up ring row.